Hey, this is Brian with King Grizzly. I wanted to talk about padding in Elementor today. I think this is another important video, and I definitely think there's a best way to do padding in Elementor, especially if you're building a larger website or you're building for a professional organization. There's definitely sort of like a worst, better, best approach to padding. So let's just jump right in. So first of all, real quick, what is padding? If I select a container, you can see you have to go from, if it's set to layout, just click on advanced. Then we can set the padding. So I'll give it a number. I like to use multiples of 12. So I do 84, and it's the space sort of outside the content. So if I were to click on this container and set the padding, let's say I use the same number, 84, you'll see it creates space around the content inside. If I select the parent container, if we were to set the margin to something like 84, that's going to be the space outside the box, outside. So if you look up the box model in CSS, padding goes inside, margin goes outside, right? So by default in Elementor, you're going to get something like this. Not much padding, right? So I'm building a site. I come to this panel. I'm going to want to set my padding. Let's say I go with 84. Now I could make these different on each side if I want, but maybe that looks pretty good. Then I need to set tablet. That's too big, so maybe I'll try 60. That looks pretty good. And then on the phone, maybe I try a pixel value like 24. Oops, I had that set to the pencil. So if it's on pixels, you could go to 24. That looks pretty good, but as I get to bigger mobile device sizes, maybe I feel like that's pretty tight, right? So I'm sitting here making judgment calls. So maybe I'm going to go with some combination. I'm going to click on the pencil, and I'm gonna give a percent padding. I just want to show the sort of thought process here, and then we'll move on to the what I think is a way better way to do this stuff. So 24 pixels. So I'm setting the left and the right to a percentage, which by the way, I do recommend on the phone sizes because then you get more breathing room out here on the bigger ones. And then as you get smaller, that's going to reduce down some. So that, that's nice. And if I wanted to, I could click on this and make sure it lines up with my picture, and I could make my picture 100% wide, whatever. So that's one way to do it, right? So I've now set my padding. It looks good on desktop, tablet, mobile. Great. Now I have to build another one. And if I'm building like a 50-page site, I have to build hundreds of panels, potentially, or at least dozens, right? So I click to add a new one. Maybe I'll add a Flexbox container. Great. Now I got to start all over. Now I'm sitting here thinking, what were the numbers I had? Right? So do I write them down? Was it 84 or was I using 96? I can't remember. I think it was 96, right? So you can see, then we're going to have to go down to tablet, and we're going to have to go to the phone, and we're going to have to make adjustments. Or maybe I'm savvy and I right click this one, hit copy, come down here, I right click and I hit paste style. Cool. Now all my paddings are what they were before. However, if I want to make an adjustment, like maybe I don't want any padding on the bottom, or I want half or like a third. So I turn this off, I go to the bottom, and then I'm trying to think like, what is a third of 84? Or, even what's a half? Like maybe it's 32 because I make a math mistake, right? So it's very manual, right? It's not globally controlled. So it would be better if our padding had some sort of global default, right? So that's where we go from like what I think this is the worst approach. If you're building a one-page landing page, great. But I think there's a better way. So let's go one step up. So this is, I think, the worst approach. Let's go to a better approach. So I'm going to save my progress here. Okay, so I've set the padding back to just not being set yet, right? Okay, so here's the better way to do it, and then I'll show you the best. So we're going to go to the settings here under site settings. I'm going to click on this, and we want to go to the layout tab. And so what we want to do is set our container padding globally. So what this will do is you can set defaults. So this was a really great add by Elementor when they did it. So you can see now all containers are going to have 84 pixels around each side on the desktop. And then we'll go to tablet, and let's say we wanted to go with 60. And then we will, and that it's adding it to all containers, you'll notice. So like it's going around the container with the text, it's going around the parent container. And then finally, we'll do our phone, and we'll go with our custom size. So we'll do our 7% left, we'll do our 7% right, we'll go with, for now, just pixel values on the top and bottom. I'll do 24. Okay, great. So I'm going to save my changes, and then I'm going to X out of here and go back to the page. So let's look at the desktop. Okay, so as you can see, now, anytime I add a new container, it's got a nice padding. And if I go to tablet and mobile, it's good to go. Very nice, right? So there's still some challenges here, right? Because this container here got that huge padding. I don't really want it to have that much padding, and I definitely don't want this sort of menu bar to have that much padding. So I'd like to change it. But look, there's no numbers in here. So if I click to undo that chain link, then it collapses. Now I'm thinking, I want this to be about half maybe, right? So what was I using? 84, or was I using 96 on this project? I think it was 84. So on the top, I'm gonna do 42. No, that's too much. I'd rather do about like a third. But what is a third again? I don't know. Was it 24? You know, so if you're trying to stick to any kind of a design system, especially if you're following a Figma file, and then I can't, what was the left, right? So you can see this is still, it's better. It's not perfect. And one other important detail to point out is that we have now detached this particular container from the global padding, right? So we've tried to estimate what we think is whatever a third of the spacing on the top and the bottom. But if we're building for a professional brand or organization, and then we decide that globally we want to change the padding. So if we went to site settings and we change these a little bit, right, for some reason, say there's a design change, we want to tweak these a little bit to maybe 72 or something like that. Well, then when we go back to our pages, anything that has been manually overruled, it's not going to notice that change. So suddenly, if we adjust globally what our preference is for how much padding we should have on any given device, or if we were trying to make this to be a 50% or a third, it's no longer going to match. And we're going to have to go back through our whole site and try to find every instance where we did a manual change. And we still have things like this where it's like, well, that's too much padding, right? So if I want to adjust this, what am I going to use? So coming up with a consistent system, it's just still not there, right? So it's better, but it's not the best. So let's talk about what is the best. Ideally, we want to be able to control everything in a way that if we change the central styles, the rest of the site will proportionately understand how to change, even if we have 500 pages, right? So there's a way to do this. Let's take a look at the page. I'm gonna publish this. We'll go to the front end. Let's see what Elementor does in the code with the actual CSS. So I'm gonna reload this page. Let's try inspecting this. I'm gonna take a look at this container. Make sure I've got the parent. There we go. So I'm going to take a look at my styles, and we're looking for the padding that's being applied to that particular container. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm a little confused, but oh, here we go. Look, we have container default padding top, right, bottom, left. These are called CSS variables, so that's interesting. So let me try changing one to make sure I've got the right thing. I'll just zero one out. Okay, yeah, look, I zeroed out the top. So what we've got are these 4 variables. I'm going to try to copy them. One other point to note is that if we take a look at say the phone size, check it out. The numbers, the values for the padding change to those that we set inside the global layout settings, right? So that's neat. It's good to know that for desktop, tablet, and mobile, Elementor is dynamically putting in the numbers that we put in our global layouts, and it's assigning them to these things called CSS variables. And here's where we get into making the best solution. So what I've come up with, which has worked really well on our builds, is to build a starter block that I always use when I build something. So I'm going to add a new container. We'll go with Flexbox, but you could build with Grid or whatever you want. But just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to add a container here, and it will have, by default, it's going to inherit the normal padding, right? But it's still got some of the drawbacks. So what we want to figure out is how can we make this totally dynamic. So let me show you a good way to do this. So I'm going to create some CSS, which we would store normally somewhere else, like in the theme or like in the Elementor CSS. But for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to type it here so you can see what I'm doing. What I want to do is come up with my own class. I'm going to give it a prefix of KG for King Grizzly. You could prefix yours with whatever you want. The reason we do this is so that we don't accidentally, like interfere with other classes from other plugins or Elementor or whatever. So I'm going to call this, let's just call it like a KG block, right? So we're going to make a King Grizzly block. Now, okay, hang with me. Once you see where this is going, I think you're going to love it. And I will give you all this code once we're ready. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to make our own variable, King Grizzly padding, and I'm going to do T for top. And then what we'll do is we're going to map it to the Elementor variable. Okay, so this is the one we saw over in console here. So it's just their variable for the top. Don't let this intimidate you. Once I show you how to use this, it's going to be good. So we need to do top, and we're going to have a right and a bottom and a left. Okay, so we just need to come up with our conventions. So King Grizzly padding, let's do top right. So then we need to change the word top over here to right, and then we need our bottom, and then we need bottom, bottom, and then we need left. Okay, now you'll notice there's no padding. Why is that? It's because I'm saying to only do this when it's inside something that has that class, KG block. And also, I need to have these variables assigned, KG padding top. So if we look, I've typed them in here now. So if you click on the pencil, we can type the variables in. So by default, this is set to pixel. Just change this to a pencil, and then we can type in, we can type in our values. So variable kg padding top. So then we'd go and we do right, and then we do bottom, just putting in our variables that we made, and finally L for left. Still not working. Why? Because we need to add our class to this container, right? So this is only going to happen inside of KG block. That's a smart way to do things because then you don't accidentally interfere with anything else. This only happens when you want it to. If you wanted to apply it all the time, no matter what, you could write your CSS to target something called root instead of KG block or whatever your class is. But I like this approach. Okay, great. So now you can see we've got these variables. They're getting the global Elementor values. If we check tablet and mobile, they're dynamically changing to match whatever we go into site settings and set those values to. But let's take this to the next step, which is what makes it worth doing. We're going to go to our custom CSS. And what we want to come up with are ways that we could modify these to do some math. Okay, so let's say we wanted to have like 50% values. So like 50% paddings, something like this. Okay, what we can do is come up with a variable for that. So we do like kg padding top, and then I'm going to do another hyphen. I'm going to say 50p for 50%. And what I want to do, I'll type a colon. Like I said, I'm going to give you all these snippets at this whole snippet at the end, so don't worry. Calculate. And what I want to do is I want to take my new variable, so variable, and then a parenthesis. So I'm going to take the variable King Grizzly padding top, and I'm going to hit space, multiply by 0.5. So what I'm saying is, hey, look, I want you to take this variable, which gets the 80, I think it was 84 pixels, and I want you to just multiply it by half. So then I'm going to come over here and copy that, and we'll do the top right. Once you see where this is going, you can just feed it into GPT, and then it'll do the rest. Bottom, bottom. So if this works, we should be able to modify our variable and get 50%. So let's try this out. We'll just go over to our padding and we'll modify one of our variables. So I'm going to add the 50p hyphen 50p. And look at that. The top padding here is now half. And if I go to tablet, it's half of whatever the tablet value was. And if I go to mobile, it's half of whatever the mobile value was. So it's totally dynamic. And here's what's really cool is we could adjust per device size if we wanted to. So I could say, take our variables, and I could come down to this size, I probably want to run through these and change them. So left, bottom. Now what you could do on your pre-built block is you could actually preload the values on desktop, tablet, and mobile if you find that preferable. It just won't cascade the same. So like if I had preloaded these like this, you'll notice that my 50% from the desktop no longer cascades because I've manually set tablet. That may not bother you because you might want to just quickly run through and go 50%, right? So you could do that. Um, it kind of depends on your preference. I tend to leave the tablet size blanked out. So it inherits whatever I do at desktop. Because if I want it to be 50% on desktop, I probably want it 50% on everything else. But just so you know, we could change this. So I just showed you, like, if I go back to top, if that's 100%, but if I look at the desktop, it's 50. And let's go ahead and add another calc, and I'm going to give you the full set. So I've got all these different numbers here, right? Like I have like 75%, 66%, etc., 200%. Let's try to make one for 200%. So we've got our 50% paddings. What if you wanted to double it and make it bigger for some reason? So I'm going to type in 200%. We'll change this from 50p to 200%, right? 200, 200. So if we load up our whole site like this with variables, then when we go and we change the global layout values, the entire site will update proportionally. You don't have to go through hundreds of panels, desktop, tablet, and mobile, and make adjustments. Okay, so this should give us a value for 200%. Let's try it. So if I click on this, go to layout, and change my 50p to 200%, look, doubled, right? If I go down to the tablet, since we just manually typed in these values, it's going to just be whatever I type in, right? So I could, if I wanted to, for some reason, I could just zero this out. Now there's no padding there. But what I like to do, like I said, is I tend to let tablet and mobile inherit whatever desktop is. So you can see that 200% now is flowing down, but in a very proportionate way. So hopefully the light is coming on with how this approach works, right? So what we do is we create our own starter block here. We give it a class. You can put whatever class name you want. You just need to make sure that you put it on that starter block. And then what we want to do is by default, just have our normal variables for top, right, bottom, and left, right? And then what I do is I go ahead, once I feel like it's all set up nicely, I'm going to save this as a template. But what I would suggest doing before you get to this step is thinking about, what do you normally put inside these? So for me, I oftentimes will put inside some columns, right? So this is inside one of my, like a starter kit website I've made. So I have a starter block in here that's very similar to what I just showed you. But what I do is I put content inside it, right? So I have my section here that I have given my class. I'm calling mine KG Grid on this particular one, but it's the same method, and you can see it's all loaded up, ready to go here with my variables. But I go further with this. So inside of this, I have what I call section, column, and then I have the content inside. So my starter block has a column inside it that has no padding, and then I have one that has smaller padding. So this could either be done by putting in like kg padding top 25p or something like that. Or what I've done is gone the next step, and I've created variables for gap controls also, which I can get to in a different video. But you can kind of start to see how this philosophy sort of bubbles out. So you may want to think about, do you want to pre-build something inside of this? But if at a minimum, if you just have this parent container, this is a big win. So you can save it as a template, give it a good name, like I don't know what you want to call it, but let's just say I might call mine KG starter block or starter container, whatever. Save it. And then when you're building, so let's say I'm building a page and I want to make a new panel, I click on the folder, and under my templates, I have the starter block. I hit insert, click don't apply. Just bring it in as is without changing your page settings. Look, it comes in, I go to advanced, it's all loaded up, ready to go. And then I can start modifying these as needed. Like on this one, maybe let's pretend I didn't want any padding on the bottom. I could just zero that out, good to go. And if I need to make any adjustments to right, top, or left, I can use my modifiers, right? So I wouldn't keep my CSS on this block because then every time I import it, it would keep coming in over and over and over. So what I will do is I'm going to give you the full snippet, this one here, that's got all of the modifiers that we used. You can change the KG to whatever you like, or you can keep it with KG if you want. I'm going to give you that snippet. And then what I would suggest is you probably want to go somewhere like, one easy place to go would be under Elementor, where's it at? Custom code. You can come in here, you can hit add new custom code, and then you could type in something like CSS, and you could call this like container padding system or controls or whatever you want, something that makes sense to you. And then you'll paste your snippet in here. You're going to need to wrap it in style tags if you're putting it inside Elementor. So you'd paste the code in this area, and then you publish it. And when you go to publish, it's going to ask you, where do you want to use this? You'd say on the entire site, and then you'd be good to go, and you can use all of those styles. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to make another video that's really short that just shows kind of how you can use these quickly once you have them in place. But yeah, let me know if you need any clarification. And again, look at the description so you can get the snippet and try it out for yourself. Hey, thanks for watching.